Hey everyone, happy Saturday or Sunday or Monday whenever you're watching this. So sorry for the delay. This week has been crazy. But I am here and I am ready to tell or share my story with you guys. I'm really excited. This is now like my 7th or 8th take trying to do this because every time I do it, I get to a point and I'm like, whoa, I forgot something. So I have a list now, so hopefully this will be my final take and this will be the video that you guys get to watch. But anyway, I'm really excited that we're doing this. I think sharing our stories and our testimonies with each other is a really cool way to build like intentional and really authentic like bonds and friendships within community. And you know, like we only have the summer together, but you never know how sharing your story can impact someone else's life. And so anytime you get the chance to share your testimony with someone, I always think it's really great. Plus, I just love hearing how God has worked in each of our lives. Same or similarly to Mary Beth, a couple years ago, the mundaneness, if I can put it that way, of my own testimony was something that I really struggled with. And I'll get to that in a little bit, but just know that no matter what your story is, it's important and it is impactful. So anyway, I'm gonna go ahead and kind of jump in, I guess. So I was born in Ohio. My parents met at a Bible college in Chicago. It's called Moody Bible Institute. And shortly after they graduated, they got married and they moved to Ohio, and my dad started working at a church. And so I was born like 5 years later, and then most of my early childhood was spent in Ohio. I remember being saved, or whatever phrase, whatever you want to call that, at a really young age. I believe I was around 4 or 5 years old, which being like born into a Christian home, into a pastor's home, was definitely something that I took for granted growing up. Didn't realize how like valuable and like what a blessing that was. But from basically the time I was born, I was surrounded by Christian community and just by the Bible stories and like what Christianity was. And so just growing up in that environment, it was just normal almost to be like so focused or so like, I don't know, just have it be that much of a presence in my life. And so I was saved at a really young age. Nothing traumatic happened to me, but something happened. I might have like tripped and scraped my knee, I don't know. And I thought, oh my goodness, what if I had died? And then I was like, if I die, I won't go to heaven because I don't have a relationship with Jesus. And so I went to my dad and I was like, Dad, I need to have a relationship with Jesus. And probably didn't say the word relationship because I was 5 years old and I probably couldn't say a word or didn't understand a word that big, but you get the gist. And so my dad kind of talked it through with me. And then from then on, we just continued to, you know, go to church and do like the normal like church things. And after I was 5 years old, I was probably like 5.5, we moved down to Florida and we did a couple like back and forth moves, which is kind of confusing, so I'm not going to get into the details of it. But when I was starting 3rd grade, we settled in Sebring, Florida, which is then where I spent the rest of my childhood and middle school, high school, all that stuff. And so, again, my dad was a pastor of the church that I was going to, and the church in Sebring that I came from is very small. It's mostly retired missionaries because only like 5 minutes away from the church is an SIM village. SIM is a missionary organization. It used to stand for Sudan Interior Mission. Now I believe it stands for Serving in Mission. And so all of these missionaries that have gone overseas, like back in like the 1900s, they retire and they move into this village. So it's kind of like a gated community, but for retired missionaries. And my mom's parents live there, which was really cool because then they lived super close to us. They lived super close to the church. My mom's parents were missionaries in Africa for like 15 or 20 years. So she actually like got to grow up in Africa and grew up as a missionary kid. So that was really cool. But anyway, so I grew up not only like being a pastor's kid and doing all of the traditional churchy things, but I also had missionary grandparents. So I got to hear stories of how the Lord moved in other countries. And so, Jesus was always just this big part of my life that was just kind of there, and I didn't really do anything with it, which granted, when you're a little kid, there's not a whole lot that you can do necessarily. But every summer I went to VBS. I grew up going to this church camp called Lake Swan Camp, which is actually like 30 minutes away in Melrose. my like denomination, which I guess I should say I grew up in the Christian and Missionary Alliance denomination, which was started back in like the 1920s by a guy named A.B. Simpson, who was a pastor, and he wanted to go and evangelize he was like living in New Jersey. He wanted to go and like spread the gospel to like these immigrant workers, and the people of his church were like, no, like we don't need them in our church. And so he broke off and started his own church and just started preaching the gospel to anyone and everyone. And so the denomination as a whole just has a really big emphasis on evangelism and mission work, and so they send a lot of missionaries overseas and all that stuff. But anyway, that probably wasn't important. But every summer, like the Florida Christian and Missionary Alliance churches have a summer camp, and every year, for the most part, it's hosted at Lake Swan Camp in Melrose, Florida, right outside of Gainesville. And so for the 10 or 15 years that I went to that camp, both as a camper and a counselor, those were some of the most like impactful moments in my walks with the Lord. Growing up in elementary school, I kind of struggled a little bit with doubt in like the security and the realness of my salvation, because I had been so young when I had first accepted Christ, and was it really real? Did I really understand? And so when I was 9 or 10, it was like right after 5th grade, at summer camp at Lake Swan, I rededicated my life to the Lord. And from then on, I was like, okay, I'm going to take this seriously. I'm going to actually read my Bible and figure out what it means for me, and not just like hearing the stories in children's church and that sort of thing. And so then going into middle school, I was really like excited about like reading my Bible, and all through middle school I was a part of a Bible quizzing team, which was probably like one of the coolest things ever, because I'm a really big nerd. I love studying and like memorizing things, and so basically like it was a competition of like Bible stuff. So it was like my dream, I guess. But in middle school, because of that, I kind of developed this complex of like it was all head knowledge, and it was all performance based, and none of it was really real. And I didn't realize this until I got to high school, because for the last like 3 years, I had been not faking it, but I had been memorizing scripture for Bible quizzing, and I had been like, I knew all the right answers, and I could always impress people, and I was like the perfect child that like read her Bible and did all these things, but none of it was really real. It was all head knowledge, and none of it was heart knowledge. And so that really convicted me when I came into high school. So when I started my freshman year, I don't really know what it was, but something in me was like, and now I know, now that I'm older, it was part of the Holy Spirit's prompting that was just like, you are not taking this seriously. Like, this isn't real for you. It's just a show. And I happened to be reading in the book of 2 Corinthians for whatever reason, because I was like, oh, I'm just going to start reading the Corinthians. So I just started reading them, and I got to 2 Corinthians, and 2 Corinthians 5, 14 and 15, I read those verses, and I read them like 3 times because it was just so mind-blowing. And depending on your translation, but 2 Corinthians 5, 14 and 15 says, "For Christ's love compels us, for we are convinced that one died for all, and therefore all died. And because he died for all, those who live should live no longer for themselves, but for him who died for them and was raised again." Some of you who may know me more personally know that I have the word compelled tattooed on my ankle. Starting my freshman year of high school, that word became like my life motto word, so to speak. I would write it everywhere on my school notes, in my journal, and my notes at church. That verse just became like my life verse to remember that like this life, my life, is not about myself, and I need to use it to glorify God and to do things that glorify him versus just doing things to show off myself. And so starting my freshman year, I started this Christian Instagram page called Teenage Christian Girl. It's still up if you want to go look at it. I don't tell a lot of people about it because I haven't really posted in like a year, but I started posting these little like daily devotionals. And because I would have to, read the Bible in order to post these devotionals, I started reading the entire Bible, and I made it almost all the way through. And it was just such an exciting thing for me, which I am really fortunate that like time in my life that the Lord just gave me such a love for the word, because I would come home from school, I would finish my homework really quick, and then I would sit and read the Bible for hours, and I would write these posts, and it became such a big part of my life and such a big part of why I am as close with the Lord as I am now, because I just kind of started devouring the Bible like I never had before, and praying and really just seeking the Lord and trying to understand what his will was for my life. And around the same time, freshman year was a very big year for Janae. Freshman year was when I first felt the Lord kind of nudge me or like point my eyes towards nursing. I was sitting in class and we had to do a project. It was like picture yourself in 10 years and decide where you want to live, what car you want to have, and like you have to be making enough money to support all these things, whatever. And so I don't remember how I searched it, but I just searched nurse and then like it popped up like pediatric nurse and I was like, okay, I think I might do nursing for a career. And that's just kind of how it happened. But anyway, as I like moved throughout high school, I had really great friends and my parents were like still such a support. But high school was a big struggle of, okay, like, do I want to, like, am I going to take this seriously? Am I going to really pursue the Lord, or do I want to fit in with my friends? Because the way that my personality is, at my worst, I depend solely on people's approval. And so there were definitely times in high school where I was not following the Lord like I should have been. I was doing things to fit in or to please other people or just to, I don't know, because I didn't really face a lot of like persecution in high school, so to speak, for my faith. But people that I had grown up with from 3rd grade on, we all had classes together and they'd be like, oh, like she's just like the Jesus freak. She's just like the goody goody two shoes. And I didn't like that. And so I tried, didn't really succeed, but to whatever extent in my own life, I rebelled against that because I didn't like that label. And so there was a time for sure where I was not walking with the Lord like I should have been or like I really wanted to. And then I graduated high school, and my first year after high school, I finished up my associate's degree at like the local state college that I had gotten a lot of dual enrollment credits from in high school. And I did a 1-year Bible college program in my hometown that was just based there. One of the pastors in my hometown was like, hey, I'm gonna make a Bible college like 15 years ago. So it's just a 1-year program. It's called Great Commission Bible Institute. To this day will probably be one of the best years of my life because it was just a year spent saturated and permeated with the Word and studying the Word and learning how to study the Word and breaking it down and looking at every single verse in the Bible, which is just love it so much. And then at the end of that year, we got to go to Israel and, like walk where Jesus walked and like just see all of these really important like biblical places. So if you ever get the chance to go to Israel, 10 out of 10 recommend, because just reading the Bible is amazing and reading these stories and seeing how the Lord worked in these people's lives is really great. But I'm a very visual person. And so getting to hold up my Bible and like see the well where I can't think of the story, sorry. But anyway, just getting to see these places in real life, or getting to stand like on the side of the Sea of Galilee where Jesus preached to his disciples, and getting to stand on the Mount of Olives where, not the Mount of Olives, sorry, getting to stand by the Sea of Galilee where Jesus like gave all of these like really great speeches, like feeding the 5,000 and all of that stuff. Just getting to be in these places is just really cool. Sorry, my mind kind of wandered there. But anyway, kind of fast forward to now. After I graduated from GCBI and with my associate's degree, I transferred into UF and started the nursing program, which is what I had been doing for the last 2 years. So now I'm in a weird season of waiting and transition from being a full-time student for the better part of 16 years of my life to now trying to start a career and start real adulthood. And so the Lord has just been really teaching me patience and trust, and just, I'm a big control person. Like, I always want to be in control. I try to control other people sometimes, definitely try to control what happens in my own life. And during this season, the Lord has really been saying, Janae, this is something you don't have control over. You just need to trust that it's all going to work out. And so that's kind of what I'm working through now. But big overarching summary, I was saved when I was 5. I rededicated my life to the Lord when I was 10. When I was 14, I really started to take my faith seriously. And there are other parts of my life that I could definitely talk about. I struggled with like the importance of my own testimony for a while, but this video is already probably 13 minutes. So I apologize for that. But anyway, thank you for bearing with me. Thank you for bearing with the rain, and probably not good quality sound from sitting in an echoey car. But anyway, I hope that this was encouraging, or at least maybe enlightening, and just like I said, no matter what your story is, no matter if it's like mine, where you grew up in church your whole life, or you came to faith later and you didn't come from a family that loved the Lord, and you didn't have that kind of background, no matter what your story looks like, the fact that God wrote it makes it special in and of itself, and the fact that it's yours and it's unique to you just makes it even more so. And so I hope that this just kind of encourages you to lean into the parts of your story that maybe you don't think are as important or as cool necessarily, because we don't have to have a really cool testimony to bring people to the Lord with our stories. We just have to be open and vulnerable about how the Lord is working in our lives and how he has in the past. And yeah, I hope you guys have a great rest of your day, and I will see you on Monday for Life Group.